Hey, welcome to The Explainer. You know, it's something we take for granted, the food on our plates. But have you ever really thought about how it gets there? Today, we're going to dig deep into India's huge and honestly super complex farm economy. We're talking about the whole journey, right? From a tiny seed in the ground to a system that feeds over 1 billion people. Let's jump in.
So let's start with the most basic question, right? For any farmer, anywhere. How do you actually sell your crops and get a fair price for all that hard work? I mean, you could have the most amazing harvest, a bumper crop, but if you can't sell it for enough money to cover your costs and, live, then what's the point? The whole thing just falls apart. So, how has India tried to tackle this massive problem over the years?
Well, for a really long time, the answer was something called the Mundi. Think of it as this big, bustling, state run marketplace. The idea behind it was actually pretty simple and pretty smart. Create one central place where farmers could bring everything they've grown and get a decent price without being at the mercy of, a totally unpredictable open market. And this whole system is official. It's governed by something called the APMC Act. That's the Agricultural Produce Market Committee Act. Now, this law sets up these market areas, these mundis. And here's the kicker. In a lot of states, it actually made it illegal for farmers to sell their crops anywhere else. They had to sell within these designated zones. And look, the intention behind this was good. It really was. It was all about protecting farmers from being taken advantage of by middlemen or predatory moneylenders. But you know how it goes. The reality on the ground? It often looks a whole lot different. Instead of being a safe haven, these mandis sometimes turn into the exact opposite. Monopolies run by really powerful groups of traders. So farmers are basically stuck. They can't legally sell anywhere else, and they're hit with high fees and commissions that just chew up their earnings. Throw in bad infrastructure, like not enough storage, which leads to a ton of waste, and you end up with this crazy situation where the farmer might only see a tiny piece of the price you and I pay at the store. Okay, so the marketplace, the Mundi system, has some serious problems. But what about when the market itself has a problem? Like, imagine a farmer has a fantastic year, a huge harvest, but so does every other farmer. Supply goes way up, and what happens to prices? They crash. They just plummet. How is a farmer supposed to survive that? I mean, that's a nightmare scenario for a farmer, right? A single price crash can just erase an entire year of backbreaking work. So to stop that from happening, the government came up with a really important safety net. And that is the minimum support price, or MSP. The easiest way to think about it is like a promise. The government says to the farmer, look, it doesn't matter how low the market price drops. We promise we will buy your crop from you at this guaranteed minimum price. It's supposed to be the ultimate backstop, the thing that ensures they can at least earn a basic income. But okay, what is a fair price? And this is where it gets really, really contentious. So the government's current formula is called A2 plus FL. Let's break that down. It's kind of like if you were having a bake sale and you only counted the cost of the flour and sugar, plus, say, a little bit for your time. But farmer groups are saying, whoa, hold on, what about the rent for the kitchen? What about the loan I took out to buy the fancy oven? They want a formula called C2, which includes all those other costs, the rental value of their own land, the interest on their own money, basically the total cost of farm. Okay, so look at this, just one number, 6%. What on earth could that mean? Well, this single number points to one of the biggest and frankly, most shocking truths about the whole MSP system. Yeah, you're seeing that right. A major government committee found that only 6%, just 6% of India's farmers actually benefit from this MSP system. So you're probably asking, why so low? Well, it's because the government really only buys large amounts of two main crops, wheat and rice, and they do it in just a handful of states. The takeaway here is it's huge. It means that 94% of farmers, the overwhelming majority, are basically on their own, dealing with all those market problems we just talked about. So with all these big problems in the mandis and with the MSP, it's no surprise there's been a huge push for some major reforms. And the big idea, the main goal, is to create what's being called one nation, one market. Basically, to tear down all these state-level barriers and create one single unified market for the whole country. And you know what's at the heart of this whole vision? Technology. The potential game changer here is a platform called ENAM. That stands for the National Agriculture Market. So what you're looking at here is the big dream, right? A single online trading platform for the entire country. Just picture it. A farmer sitting in Punjab could sell their wheat directly to a buyer way down in Kerala, all online. That's the whole point of ENAM. It's designed to smash the power of those local trader monopolies and give farmers real choices and access to a much bigger market. But it's not all just about fancy online platforms. Other reforms are trying to fix some other really deep problems. For instance, there's a Model Land Leasing Act. This is a huge deal for the millions of farmers who don't actually own the land they farm.
It tries to give them formal leases so they can get loans and insurance. Then there's the Model Contract Farming Act. That one's all about letting farmers make direct deals with big buyers, think food processing companies, cutting out a bunch of intermediaries along the way.
All right, so we've talked about how the government buys all this grain from farmers through the MSP. But what happens to it? Where does it all go? Well, that brings us to the other, equally important side of this whole story, food security.
Yeah, this is where our focus shifts a little bit, from the person growing the food to the person eating it. All that wheat and rice the government buys, it becomes the bedrock for another massive system. We're talking about India's food safety net. Specifically, that grain is the backbone of the National Food Security Act of 2013, and this was an absolutely massive deal. It's a law that basically said access to food isn't just a charity program anymore, it's a legal right for hundreds of millions of people. It is by far the biggest food safety net anywhere in the world. And you can see here just how big of a change this was. The old system was just a government scheme, but the new one, the NFSA, made it a legal right. Another huge change? It went from giving out a certain amount of grain per family to per person. That might sound small, but it makes a massive difference for larger families, making the whole thing much more fair. Now, as you can imagine, running the world's largest food program is, well, it's a logistical nightmare, and the system has definitely faced its share of criticism. We're talking about inefficiency, stories of grain just rotting in warehouses, and food not actually getting to the people who are supposed to receive it. The government agency that's in charge of this whole operation is the Food Corporation of India, the FCI, and boy has it been under fire. It gets criticized for just about everything, from huge amounts of food going to waste to corruption that pulls food right out of the system. So that same Shantakumar committee we mentioned earlier, they didn't just list the problems. They laid out a whole plan to completely restructure the FCI. And their ideas were pretty radical. They suggested things like, let the states handle the buying of grain, not the central government. Maybe just give people cash directly instead of physical grain. And let's target the help better, maybe not to 67% of the population. They even said to outsource grain storage to private companies to make it more efficient. It's really a blueprint for a totally different kind of food security system. Which leaves us with the big final question, doesn't it? Can all these ambitious reforms actually create a system that works? One that's fair to the farmer who grows the food and the consumer who needs to eat it? Or are we just stuck in this endless cycle of problems and attempted solutions? I mean, the stakes really could not be higher. It's this incredible balancing act between the lives of millions of farmers and the food security of 1 billion+ people. The whole future of Indian agriculture is really right there, hanging in the balance.